Who's your emergency contact? Who should we notify in the case of death? Welcome to the USP, where I spent the last 2+ decades of my life. And I told you I went to the SHU for an assault on an inmate. They gave me 30 days. At the time we were in the SHU, it was crowded. You know, they're putting 3, 4 man, even 5 people in a cell. But for me, I refused to be in a cell with more than just me and my cellie. You know, there was a time when it was crowded while I was in there on another occasion with the homie Brian from Green Dragon out of New York. And the CEO came to the door and they're like, hey, we got a homie that just came off the bus. Can we put him in your cell? And I looked at the CO, you know, we're talking through the door. You know, in the door, they got a little sliver of a window that you can see out into the hallway or to the cell across from you. And I was asking, I was like, well, where do you expect this homie of mine to sleep? He's like, well, he can sleep on the floor. I said, on the floor, by the toilet. He's like, yeah. So I asked him, I said, well, would you sleep on the floor by the toilet? He's like, no, I wouldn't do that. Well, if you wouldn't sleep on the floor by a fucking toilet, why would you expect one of us to? You know, when I asked him that, he didn't have a question. I mean, he didn't have an answer for me. And that's why I told him to get the fuck away from my door. See, a lot of these times when we come into the system, these staffs, these COs, these administration, whatever you want to call them that works for the system, somewhere along the line, they forget that we're still human beings. They look at us as we're lesser than them, that we should sleep on the floor with our head next to the toilet or pile up in a freaking cell with 4 or 5 deep like a bunch of sardines. But that's not what I'm here to share with you today. You know, like I said, when I was in the SHU, the homie Easy had told me about, you know, the cops beating him up while he was cuffed up and shackled. They made him go into the shower, face the wall, and 3 different COs took turn punching him in the back of the head. You know, and one of them, his name was Scott, tall white boy. This dude here, for the whole time that I was in Atwater, for lack of a better word, he's a two-faced, scary coward. In front of you, he'll talk nice, act like he's cool, scared to death. But anytime he gets a chance, he's gonna fuck you over. So when I come out of the SHU, I didn't last too long. You know, the stories I'm sharing with you now is me leading up to leaving Atwater. But before I left Atwater, I was stuck in the SHU for like 6 months. And even though I was in the SHU, there's still things going on that I can share with you that you might find entertaining. But I was out for about 2 weeks when I came back out on the compound. And on this particular day, I'm sitting in my cell. You know, I got my little smoke kit. I smoke a little weed, or at the time, what was prevalent in the penitentiary now is that synthetic weed, the K2. You know, they get it in however they get it in, but everybody was smoking that because it was a lot cheaper than smoking weed. Because you get a bundle of weed, you know, you get a gram of weed in the penitentiary. To even buy a whole gram at the time that I left Atwater, and for most of the places I've been since, Atwater and Florence, it's going to run you between $200, $300 for a gram of weed. You know, but when you can take that gram of weed, you can break it down and make 20 papers and sell those papers for 5 books each, which that's what? $25 times 20. So it's almost $500. So people invest in those things because at the end of the day, if you're just grinding, there's a way for you to make money, for you to hustle. So when the synthetic weed came in, we call it Deuce. Other names call it K2, whatever. It's just a book for a square. Some of it get you high for an hour. Some of it get you high all day. And some of it, as I'm sure your viewers might well know, take you off to another planet. Well, while I'm in there, my native bro, Brandon, he comes into my cell and he's trying to use my little smoking kit. So we're in there in the smoking kit. We're putting the smoking kit together and I hear the unit hooting hard. Hey, who, wee. They're just making all sorts of ruckus and noise. Really, we have a habit of doing that. Like if I'm out in the day room and a CO that's in the unit, if they're coming into or starts walking around doing a tour, everybody in the unit will say, hey, tear wet. That's just notifying anybody that's in a cell doing whatever they're supposed to be doing, whatever they're doing, to let them know, hey, the CO is making their rounds. Just giving everybody a heads up. You know, everybody, doesn't matter what race you are, Mexicans, blacks, whites, Asian, we all do that to give people that's in the cell doing whatever it is they're doing heads up that, hey, watch out, the CEOs are walking around, without saying, hey, watch out, the CEO's walking around. So we do the same thing when these compound officers come in and try to shake down the unit or want to come into the unit and do whatever they're going to do. So I'm in the cell putting my smoking kit together and I hear the whole unit going, tear wet, ooh, you know, fag alert, just whatever. Sometimes it's derogatory or whatever, but the whole concept of it is to let me and everybody else that's doing something in the cell know, hey, the block's hot, right? So we put our stuff away because we know there's a bunch of COs in the block. But I don't leave my cell, I just kick back. And another native bro comes in. His name is Christopher Hayes. He's the one that had the yard for the Native Americans at the time. He lived in my block. He opens his door and he comes in and goes, hey man, fucking Scott and the compound dude, they're in here shaking the unit down. So now these dudes are compound officers. Compound officers mean you're designated to the compound. But these guys, they get a kick of coming into some units and shaking people down, trying to find shit, trying to take shit from people. And, you know, on a few occasions when they do this, they end up getting their head beat in. But that's not one of these occasions. But it's just like your job is designated on the compound. That's mean the yard. You walk around the compound. That's your territory for that day. You're assigned to there. You're not assigned to the unit. The unit has 2 COs in there already that if they want to shake down somebody's cell, they're at liberty to go and do it. But there's always these dudes that is either trying to get a promotion or some brownie points that want to do extra shit. So we just kick back in the cell and wait for them to finish doing what they're doing. I'm not tripping. I don't keep nothing in my cell. You know, I never keep anything in my cell. So while we're kicking it, about 15 minutes later, I hear Scott, the CO, holler out, Hayes and Williams. By this time, Chris already left my cell to go do whatever he was doing. Well, his last name is Hayes. And the other native bro's last name is William. that we call Justin or Gucci, whatever you prefer. Now, when those guys come in from the compound, Chris was already apprehensive because just a few days prior, like when we came off of lockdown, we're not going into the kitchen yet. They're still coming in, feeding us in the block, and then they're giving us a yard here or there. Eventually, they open up the compound and we can move around into the kitchen, go eat in the chow hall and go to the yard. But the yard is split now anyway. So the first week when we came off of lockdown, they were pushing in the food cart and they're feeding us in our cells. But on the food tray, on the food cart, they have these big metal trays. I mean, they're huge. They're probably about 3 feet wide. 3 by 3, maybe 3 by 3.5, because it's a little longer than it is wide. But these are metal plates that are about this thick. Well, one of the days, just a week prior, before they came, when they were finished feeding us, they opened the doors to let us out. Well, anything and everything that's not bolted or super glued to the ground that can be used for a weapon is going to be used and made into a weapon. I come out of the shower one day and Bryson tells me, "Hey, bro, I got something tied under your bunk." Me and Bryson are selling. So I ask him, I'm like, "All right, what you got tied under my bunk?" He goes, "Just look, just pick up the mattress and you'll see." So I go in there, getting dressed after the shower. I lift up my bunk and there's ropes. Our bunks have holes in it. So there's something under the bunk that's being tied to the bottom of my bunk. So I lift up my bed and I see the ropes that is tying whatever it is that's under the bunk on the bottom side. So of course I look down and it's a fucking plate. One of them tray plates. Like I said, the tray plate is about 3 feet by 3.5 feet. It's big. So after I get dressed or whatever, I come back, I say, "Bro, what are you doing with that, bro?" "Oh, bro, I'm gonna make me a knife." I said, "No, Bryce, we don't need no knife, Bryce. People can't even handle you punching them. Just imagine if you had a blunt object at the end of your fist. It's gonna be a murder case." And I'm telling them, "Nah, we're not doing that. You don't need no freaking knives, but whatever. Whatever you guys are gonna do, go ahead and chop it up." So the next hour, Bryson, Chris, and 2 Serenos, they go into the cell, they rig it up. Like what we use to cut plates is nail clippers. Now, when you go into the shoe, you always see pieces of bunks missing. And I mean that not like little pieces, but pieces like this missing. That's somebody in there with a nail clipper. You break the nail clipper off and you use the corner and you're scraping. Shh, shh, shh. I don't know how many hours it takes to fucking cut a piece of metal off a bunk, but it's a lot of work. But on the yard, if we can find those legal clips, these are black stainless steel clips that the legal work comes in. They're a little bigger. They rig that, they glue it, they melt it into a toothbrush, make a handle so they can hold it like a saw, like this. And they're grinding. These dudes cut this whole plate up in just a little over 2 hours. They made 16 pieces, 16 bone crushers, knives that were about a foot long and maybe 4 inches thick. 4 inches wide. when they were done, Bryson had a couple of them, one for me and one for him. And he's like, yeah, bro, look what I got, bro. I'm going to use this one time. I'm like, for what, bro? He goes, nah, I just want, he's like, for him, he was just like, I just want to stab somebody one time, right? I'm like, bro, they're not going to survive. If you hit somebody with this, they're not going to survive. This is 2015. And, I've been down 18 years at the time already. 17, 18 years at the time. And, leading up to 2015, I still haven't really let myself believe that I was ever going to make it home. But after the riot, and after I got stabbed up, after I was in the cell coughing up shit for a couple weeks, when you're in the cell, you can't do nothing but think and contemplate shit. And I'm counting my years, and I'm trying to count my good time. Not that I have any. I didn't have any good time left. I've lost over 636 days good time through the course of my bid. So, again, I could have been home 2 years earlier. Then I was denied a year halfway house. So, including my 636 days good time that I lost and a year halfway house, I could have been home almost 3 years earlier than when I actually came home. I could have been home sometime around 2019, at around the same time that Bryson came home. Bryson came home towards the end of 2019, Anyway, so now that I'm here in 2015, and I just survived a riot, and I have a woman waiting for me, my wife, I started thinking about maybe I do have a chance to come home. And realizing that, I see these two pieces that Bryson presented to me, one for me, one for him. I just shook my head. I'm like, Bryson, first of all, you don't need it. Second, we definitely don't need anything that freaking big. So I talked Bryson not to having one. So we moved that out of our cell, and we let Chris and Justin hold it for us. But there's not too many places that you can hide knives in a cell, especially when they're that humongous. Most people that get away with hiding knives is because they have what we call ice pick, which is what it is. They're ice pick. They're thin, the size of your pinky, maybe the size of your finger, maybe about 6 to 8 inches long with a handle, But all these stuff, all the other ones, the big ones that you have, you can't really hide them, so you always have to have somebody designated to hold it. You alternate, we might transfer it back and forth. We have a bag of knives that, all right, I'm going out to the yard. What are you doing? You staying in? Okay, hold the knives. Vice versa. You guys are going to eat. I'm going to stay in the unit. I'll hold the knives. These things we can't just really carry around with us because they're so big. But at the same time, all these things are necessary because these are the things that can mean the difference between life and death for you. Because if somebody's rushing at you and you pull out one of these swords, they might not be so quick to just start poking you or start beating your brains in. They're going to see that and they're going to hesitate a little bit. And just that split hesitation could mean the difference between life or death. So I'm sitting in there in my cell waiting for these fucking COs to finish shaking down or doing whatever they're doing. And I hear Scott, the CO, holler for Hayes and Williams. He's like, Hayes and Williams, come to the office. already, I already know what's going on. You know, like I said, there's not too many places that you can hide these things. And these guys thinking, I don't know why they always have a habit of hiding it in their lights, because that's like one of the first place that the CEO is going to go to is your lights. They have all the keys to open up your lights. Like, we got makeshift keys that we make to be able to open the lights and open other places in the penitentiary to hide our stuff. But the lights is the first place they go. So sure enough, they go into their lights and find 6, 7 knives in there. All the ones that they just freshly cut from the pan that we got coming out of lockdown. So when they hear their names being called, I come out of my cell, and out of my cell to the left is our table and TV. So we already know these guys are going to the shoe. This is routine. We know the procedure. But also, when we got homies that's going to the shoe, we want to make sure we get a care package, because they allow you to bring a bag back with you with your radio and coffee and batteries and stuff. So all the homies congregate around the table. And I'm telling them, hey, and Hayes and William is there. And they're telling me, hey, man, they found our stash. I was like, yeah. So what do you guys need? So we're getting the coffee, the radio, the batteries, and everything together. All the homies are going to grab some from the store, man, or if they got something in their locker. We're putting a care package together for the 2 homies that's leaving. So while we're congregating, discussing, trying to figure out, you know, what's left on the yard that's unsettled. Because, you know, Chris, he has the yard for the Native Americans. So when he leaves, somebody else has to step up in his place. And also, if there's any ongoing issues or whatever, he's over there letting us know what issue is brewing, what we have to deal with, and all the rest of it. So while we're congregating around the table, the CEO, Scott, comes to the table, say, hey, let me holler at you guys real quick. You know, really at this time, I'm not trying to hear nothing from him. You know, I already know he's a piece of shit. I've had prior encounters with him. He's a lying, two-faced coward. And if he's watching, fuck him and his mama, you know. So he's calling everybody to unit to our table. He's like, hey, let me talk to you guys. It's like, you know, when I first came into the unit, this him in his words, when I first came in, I wasn't even going to shake down the unit, but you guys were hooting and hollering and all that. So that's why I shook down the unit. Which is a lie. Which is a bold-faced lie coming out of his mouth. So I called him on it. I said, man, stop that shit. We're not trying to hear that shit. You came in the unit with the intention of shaking down. So miss me with that shit. Get the fuck out of here. Because, you know, I'm trying to have a conversation with my homeboy. And he's standing there trying to fucking justify himself. It's not the first time he's done it. Before he came in our unit to shake our sales down in our unit, he was already in another unit shaking sales down. So the shit that's coming out of his mouth is all bullshit. And I'm not in the mood to hear that shit. So when I tell him, man, get the fuck out of here. We ain't trying to hear that shit. He looks at me and he's mad dogging me. Like giving me, okay, this dude's big. He's like 6'6", 6'7". You know, I'm 5'5". He's got at least a foot over me. You know, but the difference between me and him, he's a coward and I'm not. So he's fucking staring at me. So I asked him, I said, what the fuck you looking at, homie? He said, what? I said, yeah, what's up? I said, what you want to do? I'm not cuffed up. You know, when I said I'm not cuffed up, I mean inadvertently or directly, however you want to interpret it, let him know, yeah, I know about your bitch ass beating up my homeboys in the shoe when he was cuffed up and shackled. So when I tell him what you trying to do, I'm not cuffed up, what's up? His eyes got big, and when at the same time when I said that, you know, the other inmates surrounded him. You know, because we know this dude's a piece of shit. And we were having a normal night. There was no disruption in the unit. Everybody was kicking it. doing their time, and this motherfucker came and caused all this commotion. So when he seen that people were coming close to him, I don't know what if they were surrounding him for any malice intent or if they were just curious and want to see what the confrontation was about. But there was a few inmates that approached him. And I had a comment on one of the CEOs that's been watching the YouTube. I guess he's a black dude, saying that he almost got jumped by me and Bryce in 2015. And this was the incident that he was talking about. I don't know if he was going to get jumped or not or anything. But for him to think that tells you that he had a guilty conscience. Because no one's going to do anything to you unless you first went and fuck somebody over. No one that's doing time is trying to go out their way to go assault a staff because we know we can't win. All we're going to end up doing is get more time when we put our hands on them. I know that from firsthand experience. I got 96 months for knocking out a guard on top of my 18 years for my bank robbery. So I know that. So for me to do what I did, it had to come to a point where I was fed up and I didn't care about the consequences anymore. And that's the things that these staff don't understand, that we're doing a lot of time in there in the penitentiary, a lot of time, decades upon decades, hundreds of years, life sentences. You come and do an 8-hour shift. Do your fucking job and get the fuck home. All that extra shit is unnecessary. But time and time and time again, you're always going to get a few that feel like they want to be a RoboCop or whatever it is. I don't understand their mentality because I'm not them and I'll never understand it. It's not for me to understand. But when they get their ass knocked out, when they get their ass stomped out, when they get stabbed and killed, it's always, oh, I was just doing my job. Well, anyway, when I told him, hey, I'm not cuffed up. Yeah, what you trying to do? His eyes got big. He called out Hayes and Williams. He called out for the two natives, and they left. Him and two other officers escorted the two natives out. Well, about 15 minutes later, they called for the unit to lock down. The CEO came out of his office, lock down, lock down, lock down. So all of us locked down in our unit. You know, we didn't know what was going on. We just locked in our unit. We locked in our cells. So after he was done securing all the doors, locking us in the cell, about 5 minutes later, I see Lieutenant Putton at my door. Now, Lieutenant Putton, all the interactions I ever had with him has always been respectful, has always been kosher. So I don't have anything against that individual. Well, they pop our door, and outside our door is a unit full of COs. There's at least 40 of them crowding our door. So Bryson gets up. He's like, oh, bro, what's going on, bro? I said, I don't know, but I think they're here to get us, you know? So they tell us to fucking strip, so we strip out in our cell. They want to look at our weenies and our butt cheeks and all the extra shit, you know? And Bryson's telling me, he's like, what's up, bro? What you want to do, bro? What you want to do? Now, there's no doubt in my mind that Bryson can beat every single one of these COs up in his unit, can knock every single one of them out. He'll go knock them all out until he runs out of breath. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that he can do that. And some of the CO that was at the door, they might have not known who Bryson was, but they had their chests up and they were puffing. They were eager for a confrontation. You know, like I said, at this time, both me and Bryce were getting close to the door. There's no way that we can ever beat a case if we assault these individuals. So I tell Bryce, I said, nah, bro, just kick back. What's up, bro? What's up, bro? I can take him, bro. You know, I'm like, yeah, I know you can take him. In my head, I'm like, yeah, I know you can take him, but bro, we're trying to go home. We're close, you know. And some of the CEOs that was puffing up their chest, I tell us, hey man, you need to kick back, tone that shit down. Oh, what? What you talking about? So I tell Putin, the LT, I said, Putin, tell these dudes to go ahead and tone that shit down. And Putin looked at me, and he knows what I'm talking about. He's been there the whole time I've been there. He's seen Bryson's work. He's seen videos of Bryson breaking cages, of Bryson knocking motherfuckers out. He know what it is. And to his credit, you know, he lowered the degree, he lowered the temperature in the unit. You know, he told them COs, hey, cut that shit out, cuff them up, take them to the shoe. Well, when we get to the shoe is full, but they had 1B. 1B is an overflow for the shoe, but prior to that, it used to be a check-in unit. But right now, the shoe is so full, they're just putting anybody that, you know, any overflow into 1B. Well, what caused the COs to run in on us was that when they took Chris and Justin, or Gucci, to the shoe, they were trying to put him in 1B. But Justin and Chris still had the idea that 1B was a check-in unit. And they refused to go on 1B, and in refusing to go on 1B, they bucked and got into a scuffle. I mean, it wasn't much of a scuffle because they were cuffed up behind their back. But anyway, they got into a little tussle with the guards or whatever and still got put in 1B. But at the same time, one of those COs got injured. Now, they came and got me and Bryce because this bitch-ass Scott, the CO that I'm telling you about, tried to say that I ordered them to buck and to cause that confrontation they had with the staff. So that's how I end up back in the shoe. And, well, I ended up staying in there for about 6 months before I got shipped out to Lewisburg. But before I get to the rest of the story, coming up in the next week, that's how I left the incident. That's how I left the yard. Scott lied on me, trying to say I tried to incite a riot and threatened bodily harm on the staff. Welcome to the USP.